with your strategy session for Thursday, September 4th, 2014. So today was the first day of kindergarten, and I'm glad that day is over. So check that one off the list. Very difficult day there, but we got through it, and so now I can go ahead and concentrate on looking at some charts with you guys. All right, so first the S&P 500 futures, right back in the middle of the range as it's been for the past, week or week and a half. This morning I thought we were actually going to get the breakout. This afternoon I thought maybe it was going to reverse and be a breakdown, and sure enough, it closed right back, right at that 2,000 level. So, we've talked about it before. I think this is good for the market. I think, this consolidation is needed. So let's just see what happens. But for right now, the range is really between 1985 and 2010. NASDAQ is also, if it wants to come up, is also kind of consolidating. This one, it looks like maybe it does want to kind of roll over. So maybe it wants to come back and test that trend line or eventually test the 50-day moving average. If you look at the weekly chart, we are right up against the resistance. And the Dow was up 20 points today. Again, just consolidating right at resistance, right below resistance, right above resistance from this high back in here from the 15th to the 25th of July. So we're consolidating right above that level, okay, and right below resistance, which is indicated by these couple tails up here. So we'll see what happens there. I think, again, the longer this goes sideways, I think the better it is for longer term positions. Apple down 0.83%. So you could see how we had that continuation move from yesterday. All right, I think this 50-day moving average is eventually going to come into play. But for right now, I would be very surprised to see Apple down again tomorrow. I think we should, at this point, we should probably see a bounce. There was a lot of selling going on, and I think at this point we need to see, or we should see a bounce. But again, I think that 50-day moving average is ultimately going to be the area that supports. And if that's the case, then we'll be able to move that stop to there. Right now, stop 94.30. ADM almost breaking out right at the top of that range. Okay, so let's see what happens there. Again, we indicated this the other day, 48.16, 40, say 48. I think that becomes our new stop level once we can get this breakout. Right now, it's 46.38. American Tower up 0.5%. Really just in the middle of that range. Okay, we talked about it consolidating between 100 and 96, and that's exactly what it's doing. I think eventually if we can get that breakout over $100, that will be able to move our stop to this 96.50 once the 50-day moving average is above that. APD. Talked about this downtrend line. All right, I think right now we're kind of pinching off between this downtrend line and the 50-day moving average and potentially this previous low. So at this point, if we continue to go sideways a little bit longer, just based off of time, I think we may be able to move that price or that stop to that 131 level, because it looks like now, to me, if we get into this area here between these two trend lines and it's still there, then I think obviously a break of 131 is also going to lead to a break of this trend line. We're not at that point yet, but we're getting close to being able to move our stop just because of how long the trend has gone sideways. Disney looked like it was going to break out this morning. Sure enough, closed back towards the bottom of this little, I don't know if you want to call it a bear flag, but little consolidation. Again, this one looks like it's ready or set up to move sideways. I think that would be the best case scenario for us. Move sideways similar to what it did back in here. And again, move sideways and allow this 50-day and the trend line to catch up. Trend is strong. If you look at the weekly, the daily, it's a nice defined trend. So I think, if we can get to the point where we have a couple of those weeks of sideways movement and then bounce off of some kind of support area, whether it be the 50 or the trend line, and break out over this $90 level, then I see no reason it doesn't test $100. EQR, similar to yesterday, it's just really moving sideways. We're at the point here where I think if we would if we're going to move, we're going to be breaking out over 66.70 or down below 65.90. I think, but if we do break down, I would be shocked if we broke right through this trend line in this 50-day. I think if we break down, it may be a little bit of a false breakdown and then rally straight back into it. EXpedia. Again, yesterday we thought we had the breakout, ended up closing down the bottom of the range, and then today we got a little bit more continuation to the downside. Right now, our stop is 82.55, but I think if we can and we can get some sideways action, we potentially move that stop well down the line, but we potentially move it to 85.80. But let's see if we can stay within this little consolidation, or if we happen to roll over to come back and test this trend line. But one thing that you will notice, as you see this blue line is the 50-day moving average, you'll notice that the lows have not even come close to touching that 50-day moving average. So it looks like right now this trend line, if it were to break down, we would be somewhere around this 84.50, which is well above where that 50-day moving average would be. And if that's the case, then we would be able to use that as our new stop. Fidelity looks strong, in the morning, and it closed strong. I think, even though there was this pullback, the market and a lot of our stocks did pull back in the afternoon. We did have, if you look up here at the tick chart, see if I can make this bigger for you. There we go. We've talked about this in the past, and I do look at this, but you'll see here, right in the afternoon session, we had a couple negative ticks down all the way to 14.56, another one to 13.85. So I don't know if there was some news that came out or if it was just that much selling pressure, but those are some very negative tick readings to be getting without a news driven. That's almost like panic selling right in there, and I think that's kind of what hit us at the end of the day. But a lot of our positions were able to close pretty much off the highs, but we still, I think, if I look, we think we still had a positive day. I'm not 100% sure on that, but fact is, a lot of our stocks are still in consolidation. Some of them tried to break out and failed. This one, this is a breakout in my opinion. We broke out. Right now, we're at 54.86. I think the next level that we're going to be looking at is, say, 56.70, but of course we have to wait for the 50-day moving average to catch up. All right, so but for right now, I think this level right in here, 56.70, could potentially become our next stop level. General Dynamics tried to push higher, okay, closed in the lower end of the range. Again, after this movement, I think it's warranted to have some kind of consolidation. Okay, if we can get that and get it to move sideways, get this 50-day moving average to start turning up, I think then we're going to be set up for a nice continued move higher. H&R Block had earnings last night. We talked about that in the strategy session from last night. At one point, I think it was at like 34.50 last night in the after hours, and of course today it closed lower. Okay, some heavy volume, down 2%. But for right now, I mean, did it really change anything about the trend? I mean, not really, in my opinion. I think we're still in this little consolidation, or I should say this big consolidation. But right now, I think if we don't break 32, then I think we're okay. Yes, it's below the 50-day, and yes, it broke this trend line here, which is fine. But if you look at the longer-term trend, if you look at here on the weekly, isn't it kind of possible to think that maybe it's going to consolidate in that little range there and then break out higher? And if that's the case, then maybe this becomes our new trend line. All right, and then we would obviously adjust this one. But, these are all things that you look at. Yes, obviously it broke the trend line. It broke a couple different things as far as the 50. But until it actually puts in that lower low, which would be here at 30, under 32, I think we're okay for right now. LUV really just moved sideways after a strong move from Monday or Tuesday. All right, it had this move out of this little consolidation, And really, it's just gone sideways since. For right now, with LUV, our stop is still down here at 28. We've talked about potentially moving it to 29.30 to take some risk off the table. RSG, again, similar to AMT, is really just moving sideways. All right, the longer this moves sideways, the better off I think it is for our longer term position. And the final position we had, of course, to SORO, actually breaking out today. Okay, that breakout there from this little consolidation signifies that this rally is back on. I think our next stop level into SORO is going to be this 61.70. Okay, right through here. But what we need to see is that 50-day moving average to eventually make its way above 61.70, and then we'll be able to move that stop. Couple positions that, or a couple watch list stocks that made some nice moves today. Mead Johnson, MJN. Okay, there's your breakout. If that's your breakout, I would say your stop is down here 91.50. So that's a nice setup for you there. If you look at the weekly chart, it's been consistently trending higher. Okay, so that's a great looking setup. You have your defined risk right here. Just size your position properly, take the trade, move on. NVIDIA, another one that's breaking out. This one's a little bit harder, okay? This is one that we've talked about before. What happens typically when we break out from a weekly consolidation, what typically I've seen happen, and we've seen it firsthand in these strategy session videos, is we're going to break out and then we're going to consolidate again on the daily. That would be the trigger I would be looking for if you wanted to trade NVIDIA. I wouldn't take it necessarily right here, because I think if you took it right here, your stop may have to be all the way down here at 1745, or you could potentially bring it here to 1880, but I think that's not really giving it the room it needs. I think what you want to do with NVIDIA is, you see it breaking out on the weekly, that's perfectly fine. Now let's look and see if over the next week or so, if you can get a little bit of a consolidation on the daily and then another breakout. And if you get that, then you probably are going to be able to set your stop at a more advantageous level, say this 1880, because you know now that we are breaking out over that resistance. Nordstrom's tried to break out, close lower. That wouldn't be a trade I would be taking. Home Depot had a nice big sell-off. Okay, so now this is what we're looking for here. We're looking for in Home Depot. We've defined, obviously, a top right here at this 93 level. And now we're looking to define a bottom. Maybe it's right here at this 89 level. If that's the case, and we can now, again, similar to what we just talked about with NVIDIA, if we can get some consolidation now on the daily for a few weeks, and then eventually a breakout over 93, that's the trade you want to take, and then you would be able to set your stop down here at 89. Schwab, really just a little sloppy. Dow was breaking out earlier, but ended up closing lower, so no trade on that one. And final one we're going to look at is Estee Lauder. Actually, we're going to look at one more. Estee Lauder, again, right below that resistance. And Broadcom, we talked about this breakout the other day. It's continued with that move higher. So for those of you who have taken that trade, congratulations. Kroger, similar. Okay, we talked about this as well. Taking that trade. Okay, I would have said, you're probably not late if you want to take it today, but you got to watch that earnings are coming out on the 11th. If you want to take it today, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you were, you would be setting your stop here at this 48.70. And the last one, MCK, really just at resistance. So a lot of stocks are working. Our stocks, are pretty much in resting mode. I think the market itself is in resting mode. Let's see how that resolves itself. Tomorrow's the last trading day of the week, of a holiday week for us here in the U.S. So tomorrow could be a little crazy, just because if there's some low volume, the market can move around a lot. But essentially, we're really just in a wait and see mode. I think we just need to see if we're going to get those consolidations we talked about, and if so, if we can get the breakouts to follow, and then we can adjust stops higher. But for right now, it's just wait and see and let our positions work. So with that said, have a great rest of the night. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to follow me on all the social media channels that we've discussed: Twitter, StockTwits, Google+, and YouTube. Have a great night, guys.